Hello. Thank you for volunteering to serve with Kids Kingdom. This is a Kids Kingdom training video, and we're going to go through some slides that have to do with policy. The church has wonderful policy designed to protect the children and protect you as teachers. So we're going to go ahead and start with that now. So here is our Kids Kingdom policy. Children's Ministry Policy Information. So these procedures are designed to provide a safe and secure environment for children, youth, adults, members, volunteers, visitors, and paid staff. Also to assist the church in evaluating a person's suitability to supervise, oversee, and/or exert control over activities of children and youth. So what that one means is like screening and approving volunteers, and then to satisfy the concerns of parents and staff members with a screening process for paid staff and volunteers. So really for youth ministry policy, important things to us as the Seattle Church of Christ, our selection, that we select the right people, background and screening, that we make sure they're qualified to serve, and then we train like we're doing right now. In this lesson, definitions of terms. Children's ministry is going to be classes for children aged 6 months through 5th grade. Children's ministry does not begin. We don't accept kids under 6 months old, no infants. Children's ministry does not include children past 5th grade. Once you enter 6th grade, you enter another station kind of in our church. Teachers, Kids Kingdom teachers are going to be youth ministry workers who are working within a classroom setting within the children's ministry. They're responsible for preparing the materials, teaching the classes, and maintaining order and safety in the classroom. We also have on-site coordinators. Each location, each regional location shall have designated youth ministry coordinators for operating for on-site, such as children's ministry classes. These coordinators will be responsible for the week-to-week implementation of these policies and procedures and the oversight of the designated youth ministry program. These people will report directly to designated senior ministers at that location. So please adhere to the coordinator's directions. So this is your children's ministry coordinators. Eligibility to serve in youth ministry. Any person applying to work in the youth ministry must meet the following qualifications. You must be a member of our Seattle Church of Christ for at least 6 months. Even if you are a member of an affiliated church with us for 20 years, you still have to be a member in Seattle for 6 months. You must successfully complete the application process as described within these policies. You must be approved by a designated person after review of your file. And you must be deemed spiritually fit as determined by the ecclesiastical leadership of the church. Exceptions, if any person doesn't meet the eligibility requirements listed and is not an INP. An INP is an independent non-member professional. So the most common example of an INP would be someone who is like a school assigned or professional aide to help someone who had help a child with special needs. Those people don't go through the same screening process. But anyone who's not an IMP, the leadership can ask the board of directors to kind of take a second look at qualifications. This could occasionally be done in a time of need. If we were short on teachers and we had someone who had been here for 5 months in the Seattle Church of Christ, we might waive that 6-month requirement. But in doing so, we take a closer look at that person to make sure doing so was wise. The application process. The first thing you're going to do is submit an application. Then you're going to complete an interview with our youth ministry administrator. Right now, that's Becky Meadows. You're going to give us personal references that we'll call, and we'll have a background check requested. So first, the application. It's got to be done in writing or on digital format. The application shall collect this information. It'll have your current address, any experience you have working with kids, criminal history, at least 2 personal references, a statement where you acknowledge in writing that everything you're saying is true, appropriate releases so we can conduct our criminal background check, and affirmation that you will comply with all policies and procedures should you be selected. In the interview stage, the youth ministry administrator will call or initiate a meeting for an interview. The application, your responses during the application will be discussed further, and things will be recorded by the interviewer. Personal references. If you've worked with children Your personal references should be connected to your work with children. If you've not previously worked with children, or if you only had one reference that could kind of speak to your working with children, you'll be asked to provide at least two personal references that can comment on your character, your integrity, your work ethic. Um, Basically, please give references that can talk about you working with kids. If you can't, give references that can talk about your character. The youth ministry administrator will contact your references, um, always by phone or in person for an attempt, at least two attempts for in-person discussion. If that doesn't happen, we may at that point begin the contact by email address. Criminal background check. They must be completed for every adult who works in youth ministry, everyone who works in children's ministry. If you're from outside the United States, then we have to come up with a background check from the country you came from that is similar to the one we run. You'll be given written notice before we perform it. You'll have to give us written authorization. Convictions or pleas will be evaluated in terms of following factors. If it reveals information that may be used to bar an applicant, specific steps will be made before a decision is made. And if you're disqualified from service in children's ministry because of your criminal background report, you'll be notified of the decision. Additionally, this information will be very tightly guarded. It won't be shared openly, won't be shared even beyond the youth ministry administrator. If you were to fail a background check, the youth ministry administrator would know. They would just inform children's ministry that you did not pass your overall screening. Nothing would be revealed about your background check or that you failed one. Additional screening information. Any youth ministry worker that's been through the screening process and was approved already will have an annual screening update where we check in with you, and your background check will go for 3 years. So you'll only be background checked every 3 years, but you will get an update where we kind of check in with you and make sure all information is the same every year. All files related to the screening and supervision of a youth ministry applicant shall be considered confidential and accessed only by necessary personnel. Files are confidential even if you move and want to serve with another entity. We don't share that information. No person who's known to ever have abused or molested a child may serve in any way. That's an automatic disqualifying offense. No person who's confessed to or been convicted of the offenses outlined below, or been on a probated sentence or received deferred adjudication for any of those items can serve. That would include any offense against minors as defined by state law, any misdemeanor or felony that has to do with sexual assault, indecency with a minor or an adult, assault of a minor or an adult, injury to a minor or adult, abandoning or endangering a minor, sexual performance with a minor or adult, possession of promoting child pornography, enticing a minor, bigamy, incest, drug-related offenses, or family violence. Really, any crime against a minor will be considered. So these are disqualifying offenses. Each of our regions, we have the North Shore, the city, and the East Side. Each of our regional locations will have region-specific training. Our policies are the same in every single region and equally protect in every single region. But we do have procedures about how those policies are applied that are different from region to region. You'll have an evacuation plan in each region. Things like that. Your regional coordinator, your children's ministry administrator will tell you about the regional specific things. Class ratios. So in our classes, it lists our classes by age. If the children are between 0 and 2 years old, so 6 months to 2 years old, it's 2 to 1. The thinking there is that in any emergency, a teacher could pick up one child in each arm and exit. So it'll never be 3 to 1 on children that young. Once you get 3 years old, it becomes 3 to 1. There, you're probably not picking up a child in each arm, you're ushering them out the door, but they still need a lot of supervision. 4 years old through kindergarten is 8 to 1. School age, meaning first grade through fifth grade, is 10-1. When we determine ratios, um, if we have teenagers or middle schoolers working as volunteers in the classrooms, we consider them very helpful. Um, we do everything we can to make it safe and great for them to serve in that way, but they actually count as an extra child. They do not count as an adult volunteer. So if there's a 16-year-old helping out, they count as one extra kid. They don't count as an adult. Um, we also have a 2 adult rule, meaning that children are to be under the constant supervision of a minimum of 2 qualified adults. No class or activity may operate with less than 2 workers. So if you had two kids in the baby class, the ratio is 2-1, but you would still need 2 teachers because you always need at least 2 teachers in every classroom. Other ratio information. Children in the children's ministry needing to use the restroom must be accompanied by 2 screened youth ministry workers of the same sex. No adult should be alone with a child in the bathroom. Um, this means that regional coordinators are sometimes going to have to step in and be the second adult in a bathroom visit. And that bathroom visits probably need to mostly be scheduled and coordinated. If it's an emergency, you've just got to, and you don't have 2 of the same gender adult, you just have to ask for help. Unless required by law or medical emergency, teachers shouldn't let any adults into the classroom who have not been screened and approved as youth ministry workers. If a parent or guardian needs to stay with the child and the parent or guardian is not screened and approved for youth ministry, that parent or guardian must be under the supervision of a dedicated youth ministry worker. So what this means is if a parent wants to go in with their child, they must be accompanied one-on-one by an extra teacher. So this would be in addition to the teachers you already have in the classroom, the teachers that are already provided for by ratio. So what it means is probably the youth ministry administrator would have to step in with them. Obviously, that's a bit of a burden and it affects our ability to function in our classes. But if it had to happen once or twice with a new child, we would do everything we could to accommodate. As I said, the INPs, independent non-member professionals, are allowed in the classroom as indicated by these policies. Class admission process. Classroom registrations. Children placed in the children's ministry shall be signed into the class by a parent or an authorized person. The parent, guardian, or authorized person shall register the child on each visit with the youth ministry as a sign-in. The process can include physical forms or a digital registration process. We do have an identification system. We might use tags, like you might use tags and pass out a tag, and then when they return with their tag, they get the corresponding child. We might use photo IDs like driver's licenses to check who is taking the kid, or any other system that we develop that works for identification. This will be specific by region. We will also keep the sign-in forms. We need to know which children were present on which days. So every single week, the sign-in should be completed, and every single week it should be kept. When we release a child, at least once a year, we'll have every parent fill out a form that talks about who's qualified to pick up their child. No child in the children's ministry shall be released from the classroom unless it's to the parent who has the identification, unless it's to a qualified person marked on the annual form, or unless it's to a family member who's over 16 years old. So those are the people who can have a child. Exigent circumstances require release to an individual who is not authorized, but is a reasonable designee under the circumstances. That's just going to be by case. General rules. Classroom preparation. Prior to admission of children in the children's ministry, the coordinator shall inspect the facility for obvious safety hazards and take all reasonable steps to minimize hazards. Open outlets in the infant and toddler class, exposed wiring, broken glass, things like that. Children's ministry classes are to be conducted with doors to the classroom open unless security or feasibility such as noise dictate otherwise, or unless there's a window in the door that provides a direct view of the class. All doors should remain unlocked at all times unless a security threat warrant locking intruders out during an emergency. No improper or offensive contact with the children is permitted in any youth ministry class or activity. A child under the care of the youth ministry program shall never be disciplined through the use of physical contact. There is never an allowance for spanking, shaking, pinching, or squeezing a child during children's ministry. Contact that is always inappropriate includes, but is not limited to, sexual contact, groping, fondling, tickling, kissing. Other forms of contact may be inappropriate or offensive depending on the contact, the individual, and the situation. No youth ministry workers permitted to consume alcoholic beverages or recreational drugs just prior to serving, and no one is permitted to provide it to any minor. When there's an injury, we have to notify the parent. Any incident that results in an injury means that the parent should be notified as soon as possible and in no more than 24 hours after it occurred. The appropriate coordinator shall be responsible for making sure the parents are notified. So the classroom teacher doesn't have to notify the parents, it's the coordinator. Medical attention is required if it's needed. If there's a self-harming child who's hurting themselves, cutting, or something like that, the youth ministry worker shall inform the coordinator, and the coordinator or the worker shall inform the parents. The coordinator is responsible for documenting the incident. Child abuse. Senior staff members shall train the youth ministry workers. So we will have child abuse training that helps us recognize signs of kids who are suffering child abuse. It helps us recognize the physical signs and the behavioral verbal signs. Each youth ministry coordinator shall train the youth ministry workers and internal and external reporting requirements for suspected abuse. And the training should be documented and maintained. Child abuse. Senior staff members shall train the youth ministry workers. So we will have child abuse training that helps us recognize signs of kids who are suffering child abuse. It helps us recognize the physical signs and the behavioral verbal signs. Each youth ministry coordinator shall train the youth ministry workers and internal and external reporting requirements for suspected abuse. And the training should be documented and maintained. Mandatory reporting. State law requires certain individuals to make an oral report to law enforcement or CPS if they have reasonable cause to believe a child, disabled person, or vulnerable adult has suffered abuse or neglect. Washington state law identifies certain professionals, and this is a list of them. Medical practitioner, county coroner, all these are, outside of the church. So if that's who you are, even when you're at church serving in youth ministry, you have some mandatory reporting responsibility that overlaps. Inside the church, any staff or volunteer with the Hope Center, I guess these are also outside the church. These are just more people who are mandatory reporters. If a youth ministry or employee has a question as to whether you're a mandatory reporter, you should contact the senior evangelist, the women's ministry leader, the elder, or the elder's wife. Whether a mandatory reporting obligation exists, all employees must immediately report suspected child abuse to the senior evangelist, women's ministry leader, elder, or elder's wives. So what this means is even if you're not a mandatory reporter by law, we require you to report to us no matter what. If you suspect abuse, report no matter what. If the people are unavailable, report to whoever you can at church. In an emergency, proper authorities should be immediately notified and medical assistance obtained. A report made to the senior staff or the elders or elders' wives will not relieve someone of their reporting obligations contained in the state law. Reporting it to us does not mean you don't report it to the authorities. And we do have legal representation for the church that can tell us what our mandatory reporting responsibilities are, and even just what our moral responsibilities are in reporting. We think we should over-report where possible, where necessary. We should never under-report. Thank you very much for serving. This has been the youth ministry training video on policy. And again, thank you for serving our kids.